Gabrielle and Emily end up sleeping together. And shortly after that, Camille tries to get back together with Gabrielle. And Gabrielle is just like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should just get back together with her. And then basically, oh my God, it's a hot mess. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Jada here, back with yet another review. So hopefully you guys would have seen my Wednesday review, that show, you know, that everyone's been talking about. Finally did a review on that, and this is actually going to be yet another Netflix show. Obviously, if you clicked on it, you would have seen the title already, but in this video we're going to be talking about Emily in Paris, and this is going to be season 3. And boy, this season was nuts. Like, I cannot even. Every time I took a breath and I was like, everything's good, something else happened and it just was like instant turmoil. Like, what is happening, you know? Like, you know, when you're just too connected to the character, it almost feels as though you're in the actual show. It's almost like you feel everything that the character is going through in a strange way, you know? Now, season 1 and 2, I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty interesting, okay? Season 1, definitely the ending. And then season 2, I feel at the very beginning and then also at the very end as well. But season 3, every episode had some drama in it. I swear. I was like, okay, we're gonna need to discuss this. We gonna need to talk about it, okay? Because everyone's talking about it now. I feel like season 1 and 2 were testers for Netflix almost. But season 3, I feel, got everybody talking about this show. I saw that there was a little bit of chatter, you know, with the other seasons, but with this season, ooh child, honey, you about to clutch your pearls. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna lie, the vibe of Emily in Paris, it definitely kind of reminds me of those like teen fiction books. Not like Twilight, you know, nothing like that. Like those Twilight series books, like no, not talking about that. But I think this definitely gives the vibe of a very young person, obviously going through life, trying to navigate relationships and stuff like that. But it just seems very teenagery situations that Emily would find herself in sometimes, even though she's an adult, you know, like she's a grown behind woman. And it'll be like, how are you finding yourself in this situation, Emily? Why? You know? Anyways, so Emily is played by Lily Collins. Just gonna mention all of the main characters real quick. We have Lucas Bravo playing Gabrielle, Camille Razat playing Camille. That's very interesting. They have her playing another Camille character. That's interesting. Ashley Park, who's playing Mindy Chen. Mindy is Emily's friend in Paris. Then you have Lucien playing Alfie, Philippine Leroy, I don't know how to pronounce her entire name, playing Sophie. You have Kate Walsh playing Madeline. So we have other characters. I find it interesting that they do have Julianne. Okay, I was like trying to figure out where he was. Anyway, so Julianne and Luke, they are working with Emily at her advertising firm, I think. So anyways, obviously, you know, if you've watched season 1 and 2, you find out that Emily moves to Paris from, I believe, Chicago, somewhere in the States. We're just gonna say that, okay? She moves from the US to Paris because her advertising firm had told her she needs to head over there to kind of shake things up, I guess, see what's going on, that type of thing. And she ends up really liking it there. She finds Mindy, like I said, you know, they become friends. And then also she meets, I think, Gabrielle, who is a chef. He didn't have his own restaurant at the time in season 1 though. I think season 2 was when he ended up getting his own restaurant. But anyway, so he is actually dating Camille in the first season. And Camille comes in slightly before Gabrielle, I think. I can't quite remember. Anyways, so I'm just gonna say Camille and Emily become friends. And we also find out that Gabrielle was actually living in the same building with Emily, okay, the same apartment building anyway. And then also she meets Camille, who we end up finding out is dating Gabrielle. And then I think after Camille and Gabrielle had broken up at some point during season 1, I think it was actually, yeah, like I said, at the end of season 1, it was getting spicy. Child. Gabrielle and Emily end up sleeping together. And shortly after that, Camille tries to get back together with Gabrielle. And Gabrielle is just like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should just get back together with her. And then basically, Oh my god, it's a hot mess. But basically, Camille ends up finding out that they slept together. And I think because Camille was friends with Emily before she found out that information, obviously she definitely took that to heart because Emily wasn't really a stranger to her anymore. Obviously she was just like hurt by that, right? But she tries to make a pact with Emily to say we're both not gonna date Gabrielle anymore. And we find out that shortly after that, you know, Camille decides to break the pact and get back together with Gabrielle. And it's just kind of like, what the heck is going on? Like, what? So yeah, basically that kind of looms over their friendship, even though it looks as though Camille had forgiven Emily for sleeping with her ex-boyfriend at the time because they were broken up. But yeah, anyways. So like I said, this show is very dramatic and very all over the place, but it definitely gives that like vibrancy as if it's like a teenage romance type of way. Just very tumultuous and all over the place, but they're adults. So it's like, what is happening, you know? Well, we're gonna get into season 3. So now that we got all that drama out the way and explained, season 3 opens up and we find out that Madeline, who was Emily's boss from her firm in Chicago, or the US, like I said, she had came over and she was basically saying that we're gonna go back together and we're gonna be leaving Paris, closing down our firm in Paris, and we're gonna head back to the US. And Emily was basically having this inner like, you know, meltdown trying to figure out, do I want to stay in Paris because I fell in love with being here, you know, the friends I have here, or do I just go to the States like my boss is telling me to? So eventually she finds her voice and she's just like, you know what, I'm gonna stay. And for a time she doesn't have a job, okay? Does not have a job, and she starts working for Gabrielle in his restaurant as a waitress. But of course that didn't last too long because she couldn't really speak French that fluently, and you kind of need to know how to speak French when you're in France. So that didn't last long. She ended up botching that. He let her go, and for a time she was just chilling with her now man, Alfie. She ends up finding Alfie in her French class, you know, basically that class she had to learn French in. She meets him, they start sleeping together. Eventually they become an actual item, okay? So that was now her boyfriend in season 3. And when it comes to Alfie, he eventually kind of lets Emily know in terms of her meeting his family why he was never really too keen on introducing her to his family too soon, because he had bad experiences with doing that with previous girlfriends and they ended up burning him. So he was just trying to be cautious with Emily. But the thing is, what I found so funny is that she was still kind of in love, not even kind of, but very much so in love, you could see it, with Gabrielle. But I think she was trying to force herself not to acknowledge it and pretend like it wasn't there the entire season. It was so aggravating, and she was doing it obviously because, you know, now she has Alfie, and then on top of that, Camille, who was supposedly her friend, like I said, she doesn't want to hurt Camille, and then of course she doesn't want to get in between what she thinks she and Gabrielle has together in their relationship. So like I said, there's a lot of inner turmoil going on with Emily, and then on top of that, like I said, she's trying to figure out in terms of a job what to do. Eventually Sylvie, who was the original boss of the firm in Paris, she was working for Sylvie basically in season 1 and 2, but Sylvie had quit, and that's why everything was falling apart. They was just gonna close everything and go back to the States. But eventually Sylvie tries to create her own firm, and that was proving rather crazy as well. But the thing is, Sylvie, you know, she's just like, you know what, as annoying as you are, you're still good at what you do, so I'm gonna hire you on to my firm, right? So she's working for Sylvie now again, but for Sylvie's actual firm. I feel like with Emily, she's just so all over the place. It almost feels as though every time she corrects something, something else breaks down, and it's just like, girl, you can't just keep putting band-aids on things and patching things instead of fixing the actual problem. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't just keep doing that. So that's what I was watching play out this entire season 3. It's just her trying to put patches on stuff and ignore things, even though everything was just going to hell, you know? Eventually we see the relationship with Alfie that develops even further. But with Camille, we see that she's entertaining this artist friend of hers because she's working at this art gallery. And this woman from Greece comes in, this artist, and they eventually kind of have an affair. Emily catches them, surprisingly at Alfie's party of all places, at his apartment building, and they're just making out like they're not at a party with a bunch of people who could walk in on them at any time. They could care less, okay? So she's making out with this girl on the rooftop. Emily sees them, and she's just like, well, what do I do with this information, okay? I already botched up Camille and Gabrielle's relationship enough. I don't think I should be the one to say anything. However, I do feel like Gabrielle is a nice guy. He should probably know what his girlfriend's doing behind his back, you know? So yeah, but another thing that I want to mention, actually we had a development with Mindy, Emily's friend. Mindy ends up in this full-blown relationship with her bandmate. However, he feels insecure as soon as this guy steps in from her past, who she remembers used to go to her school. They meet up, and then of course the current boyfriend's just like, yeah, I don't like how this looks, you know? So he's definitely not secure in that situation. But we find out that when it comes to Mindy and this guy, the new guy anyway, he's actually the owner of, I think, this like major fashion house in Paris or something like that. And obviously he has money, he has connections, and Emily's trying to squeeze her little patootie in there. He's trying to figure out, how do I work this angle with Mindy being friends with him? How do I work it to where I could get in connection with him so I could work with him? So every time Mindy and Emily and him hang out, she's talking about work. And eventually he gives her a chance, but she botches it. But it wasn't really Emily's fault this time. It was her boss, Sylvie. So she was just doing what Sylvie asked of her, and that was that. That kind of drove a rift between Mindy and her man, okay? Because now there's a bad relationship with Emily, and Emily is Mindy's friend. Like, what is she gonna do, you know? So that is another development that I thought I should bring up because it's rather interesting. But the end of this season was probably the craziest ending to any of the Emily in Paris seasons yet, okay? And I say that with the utmost certainty because, yes, craziest. When we get to the end of season 3, we find out that Camille pretty much asked Gabrielle on the spot, like, do you want to get married? They decide to spontaneously get engaged. So everyone pretty much ends up at her parents' house for their engagement party, all right? Stay with me now. They go for their engagement party. Mindy comes down in a helicopter halfway into the dinner. Emily is there with Alfie, and we get to a certain point in the dinner when Emily calls Gabrielle off to the side, and she's like, hey, I have a call from one of my co-workers. I think it was actually Luke. So Luke had basically gotten in contact with one of his ex-girlfriends who, oh my god, that was too funny, who was trying to stay anonymous, obviously because she has connections to the whole Michelin star process, right? And she finds her way at Gabrielle's restaurant while he's away because of Luke. Luke brings her there, tastes the food, she loves it. And shortly after that, Luke, calls Emily, and he's just like, hey, if you keep up this quality of work with the food, you definitely on your way to a Michelin star. Because that was one of the things that he definitely wanted. And you see, obviously, he's very excited by this news, and he's like kind of hugging up on Emily, kissing her hand and stuff. And Camille just happens to see that, and she's like, what is this? But before that, honestly, I feel like she was actually pretty strong in her relationship, even though they had that happen. But I think that kind of brought up in her mind like, oh, you might still be in love with Emily. What I find even more crazy is that after this, they just decide, oh, maybe we should get married now. And it's just like, okay. So there's actually a cathedral on the property, like literally very close to the house, and they call the pastor or priest, whatever you want to call him. They call him in, and they're basically at the altar pretty much about to get married. And out of nowhere, after Gabrielle pretty much says his vows, Camille is just like, you know what? Nah, I'm not gonna force you to do this, because I could see it in your eyes. nah, you know, like we shouldn't do this, right? And he's just like, what are you talking about? Like, what? We were good, you know, like we were good a couple minutes ago. What just happened, right? So she blurts out, well, you and Emily clearly still are in love, you know, ever since y'all slept together. Like I don't think she said it like that, but that's what pretty much came out in my mind. Like she pretty much says everything. So Alfie immediately turns to Emily and he's just like, I knew it was something. I knew it was something going on between y'all two. Because I knew he felt that tension between them. They would hang out together as friends all the time. Emily and Alfie would be at Gabrielle's restaurant all the time hanging out. And I'm like, how do you as a guy not find this like tension kind of weird? Like between the two of them, the way they would interact with each other, it would be kind of awkward. And I'm like, how do you not pick up on this energy? You know? So that was wild. He runs off, Camille runs off, and everyone's trying to figure out what the heck just happened. All the beans are spilt, okay? It is wild. And we see basically Gabrielle at the very end, Gabrielle and Emily sitting on this wall in the house outside, trying to figure out how they're gonna clean up this mess. And we find out while Gabrielle is talking to Emily that the reason that Camille and him decided to get engaged was because Camille was pregnant. Yep, you heard me correctly. This woman had cheated on this man with another woman, ran off to Greece with the woman for a few weeks, decided to come back because she found out she was carrying his child. I'm like, what in the hell is going on? And on top of that, with Emily, I'm pretty sure she probably had reached this point where she was like, you know what, maybe I should be with Gabrielle, but I feel like even that has been just demolished after finding out he now has a baby mama. She's pretty much gonna be his baby mama because it don't sound like she want to get married to him. So, child, it was wild. It was wild. I was like, is this a soap opera? What is happening? So honestly, I don't know how either of them, Gabrielle or Emily, are gonna figure things out. Obviously when it comes to their jobs and stuff, they're fine, but their personal lives are in serious need of help. In season 4, hopefully it does get picked up for a 4th season, I hope, because they can't just leave us high and dry like this. But in the next season, I think they're definitely going to need to work on fixing the actual problems instead of just patching things and pretending like they're not there. Like I said, in connection to that statement, Emily kept on pretending like she was not in love wholeheartedly with Gabrielle. And it was like, sis, please stop. The sexual tension is through the roof. Like how are you going to keep ignoring this feeling and keep acting like y'all are the best of friends when you clearly want to be more than friends with this man? Anyways, y'all, I was screaming to high heaven every episode because there was so many times when Gabrielle and Emily would be alone together and I'm like, what is going on? Example number 1. This is before Emily decides ultimately she doesn't want that job in the US anymore. This is before she decides she wants to quit. So in order for her to do some type of research for, I guess, some type of advertisement that the firm was working on, she needed to do something with McDonald's or something like that. McDonald's in Paris. And Gabrielle catches wind of that and he decides to take her, Emily now, by herself to McDonald's. And it pretty much looks like a date. Like, I don't even know how to explain that one. Like, that just looks funny to me, you know? But I guess if you guys are okay with having friends of the opposite sex hang out with your significant other, like, you know, go ahead. And them be by themselves too, go ahead. Example number 2. Gabrielle's drunk one night, okay? Emily comes to meet up with him. I can't even remember why. I think she had actually texted him to ask him if she could talk with him for a second because she was trying to figure something out. Alfie wasn't in town, I don't think, right? So she is talking to Gabrielle, realizes he's super, super drunk. So she's just like, you know what? We're just gonna take a taxi, head home, right? Thankfully, they live in the same building, like I said. So in the car, Gabrielle's little drunk self tells Emily that he's in love with both Emily and Camille at the same time. And it's like, what? what is happening? And then example number 3, or exhibit 3 at this point. They're pretty much at this dinner. I think it was because Alfie couldn't go with them, right? He had to work because his boss was being a nuisance. So he had to stay behind, but Gabrielle and Emily go to this Michelin star restaurant, and Gabrielle's freaking out over the fact that, you know, they have a Michelin star and the food is so good, and he had done research on this restaurant beforehand, right? A true foodie, okay? But anyways, so basically he and Emily decide they're still gonna go. You know, he's freaking out over the chef, the restaurant, all that stuff, asking him a bunch of questions, and clearly you can see every time that, you know, the waiter or the chef comes in and keeps calling them like a cute couple or nice couple or something like that. Emily, of course, you know, she was kind of like, eh, but Gabrielle was like, eh, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. And it was like, what is happening? But I think where Emily felt guilty though is that she was supposed to keep the receipt from the restaurant so that her boyfriend Alfie, his company that he works for, could pay for the dinner. Basically mark it off as like a work expense or something. And she didn't want to give him the receipt because it had like a cute couple or something like that, like nice couple or whatever. And that was on the receipt. She was feeling guilty about it, like, ugh. Maybe he might think there was something going on between us, like we were flirting with each other or something, for, you know, the staff to say that on the receipt, you know? But either way, child, this show is nuts. Like, honestly, I feel like there was just so much to bring up. I probably left off a lot because I'm out of breath at this point, but season 3 was nuts. I can't even really convey how, like, all over the place my emotions were in this show. It was crazy. But y'all can let me know what your thoughts were on this season. I can't wait for season 4 though. It's like one of those really lighthearted shows. It's not really meant to necessarily be like a drama. However, it does have dramatic moments. It definitely reminds me of like those teen fiction books, like I said. So you don't really take it too serious, but it is kind of like all over the place, and you do kind of have those moments where you're like, gasp, you know what I mean? But yeah, but y'all can let me know what your thoughts were down in the comments on this season, and also season 1 and 2. Let your girl know, okay? Let your girl know, because I didn't really get to talk about season 1 and 2, but I just kind of glazed over it. But yeah, this was crazy. But I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.